Welcome to XXIM YouTube channel. In this video, Ankit had a fun discussion with Christian Ludwig, a titan and a relentless force behind Kaspa.
It's delusional to think that Lightning Bitcoin is L1 Bitcoin because it's literally not.
As an Inc. 500 entrepreneur and the mastermind behind Compound Hash Rate, has been all in on Kaspa.
I dollar cost average $1.3 million at an average price of 0.005.
Christian shares his insights on why Kaspa is even more fair launched and decentralized than Bitcoin.
It's fascinating to me that even before 2017, Jonathan Sampolinski, Aviv Zohar, Aspect, these guys were putting on scaling Bitcoin conferences, trying to persuade Bitcoin Core to scale Bitcoin. In the Satoshi era, mining was not a thing.
You will learn how Christian is running Kaspa Unchained X account, aka kaspaCurrency old account, and his measure of success for it.
Look, even AI is tired of this drama.
And lastly, a bonus from Christian.
Where do you expect the price to be at that time?
That's why Bitcoin is boring to me.
Welcome to XXIM Podcast, your home of decentralization. Today, I'm here with Christian Ludwig. Welcome, Christian.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So let me start by congratulating you for becoming a dad. Is it your first baby or second one?
This is my second baby. So we had two babies as quickly as you biologically can. One after the other. So they're what's called Irish twins. So they're both under 1 year of age. As soon as the second was born, they're a few months older now, but, we have our hands full here at the Ludwig household.
Oh man, I'm sure. And I see you active on X all the time. So I'm sure it's taking a toll on you, but look, and both mama and baby are both okay and well and healthy.
Yeah, that's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. That's what matters, right? But Christian, I want to get into it. So you're a big advocate for Kaspa, right? So when did you first discover Kaspa?
Yeah, I first discovered Kaspa because I was involved in the mining community, and that's how I found it. So I've been in crypto since 2017, and I got involved in mining after the 2021 bull run. I remember I started my partner and I's LLC, Compound Hash Rate, the first day of 2022. So January 1st of 2022. And Kaspa was 2 months old at the time. And obviously I didn't find it right then. I wish I did.
Yeah.
But I found it extremely early, and I was in a fortuitous situation to enter the asset. So I could not complain or look back at what if. But started the mining company. As soon as we started the mining company and invested like $250,000 of GPUs, we were actually, both my partner and I, we were running them in our house. We had rigs of GPUs scattered across our houses with like the air conditioning on full blast. And we were mining Ethereum. And 1 month into mining Ethereum and buying all these GPUs, which we actually bought them at like record prices, Vitalik announced the shift from proof of work to proof of stake.
Right.
So that was a big, oh crap moment.
Yeah.
And
wait. So this is before Kaspa then, right?
Correct. And Vitalik announced that, okay, there's no more mining. We're going to save the world and do proof of stake. And ever since then, their dominance has fallen dramatically, and it's not been a positive for Ethereum's project, in my opinion. Especially for stable coins. And we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Where Kaspa comes in there. I was kind of just like, so is this the end of the road? Because all the other coins you could mine just weren't very profitable. While Ethereum was. So he's like, let's just continue to mine until July when they actually do the transition to proof of stake.
Right.
And he said, I remember his words. He's like, I promise you there's going to be some sort of new innovation. that actually has wings. So it's something very optimistic to say in a pessimistic situation. And the switch to proof of stake happened, and we didn't find Kaspa then.
Okay.
Because Kaspa in the beginning, it didn't really have much socials. It's kind of like you had to be introduced to it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it was like 700 on the top
rank,
1,000 cryptos. Yeah. It was a sub $20 million market cap, and people were just mining it and trading it over the counter. I even remember my first purchase was on Trade Ogre.
Yeah.
And then Mexi listed it.
Mexi, yeah. There's a big jump here. So you're mining Ethereum, and then somehow you ended up finding Kaspa. Like, how did that happen? You weren't part of Daglabs, because most of the other people that were early in Kaspa were somehow related to Daglabs.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of people who weren't related to Daglabs who were mining Genesis.
Okay.
Wolfie is one of them. He was there 1.5 weeks into the project, and he told me there were already like dozens of strangers outside of Daglabs and in the Discord and mining.
Yeah.
And that's just a product of today's day and age, is people hunt for these gems to that extent. And they have the mining equipment ready. Whereas in the Satoshi era, mining was not a thing. So that's one of my arguments as to why Kaspa is even more of a fair launch than Bitcoin, because it's a more competitive mining environment today than it was in 2009. But anyways, I digress. Yes, we were mining Ethereum, weren't able to anymore. The only coin that we could mine that was profitable was Flux, which is a DePIN coin, cloud infrastructure.
Yeah, distributed.
It was correct. And it was barely profitable the whole time. And one day, happily and serendipitously, Flux tweeted about Kaspa and tagged the main account, basically saying that some Kaspa notes are now hosted on Flux, making Kaspa even more decentralized, because basically people can host their nodes on a DePIN versus an AWS server.
Yeah.
And I clicked into the Kaspa Twitter account, and I immediately sent it to my partner, and I was like, hey, this is proof of work. Like, let's research it and see if it has any wings. And I didn't think too much of it, because, there are dozens of projects that we look into, and after like 30 minutes of research, you find out they're nothing special, right? So a few days passed by.
Yeah.
And I start seeing some tweets from the account, and then I start looking up the cash tag, and I started to research, and I started to not find any issues. Right. And I'm like, this is very strange. This is too good to be true.
This is too good to be true. Right.
Yeah. And then pretty quickly we switched all of our GPUs over to Kaspa. Okay. And then I personally had just sold my company that I worked towards for about 10 years. I was in sales in college while I was studying marketing and information systems. That's when I first heard about Bitcoin, was 2013 by one of my, information systems professors. So that's kind of like how it was on my radar before I actually jumped in 2017, and, went into sales, ended up selling pest control door to door in college, built teams, and then broke off and started my own company with some partners of mine, and we built it up and sold it. And, I had just sold it literally days before I found Kaspa like a few weeks before I sold it. And I took a good chunk of that capital, actually about 35% of that sale capital, and I dollar cost averaged into Kaspa only 2 weeks after researching it. I dollar cost averaged $1.3 million at an average price of 0.005.
0.005, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So this is actually the part I wanted to understand. So you were I don't know if many people are aware of it, but you were recognized as the Inc. 500 entrepreneur in the pest control business, which is what you're mentioning, right? So what was that business, and how did you, from that business, which seems like a successful business, you ended up in mining? Because that's a big jump, right? And a totally different vertical altogether.
Yes. It's completely different, but it's similar in some aspects. As it's recurring revenue.
I see.
And it's kind of like, our pest control business was kind of a newer model on pest control. It was almost a marketing company just as much as it was a pest control company, because we specialized in door-to-door sales. So we had a very good go-to-market strategy, and that's what allowed us, 1 year, we were on the Inc. 5000 list for 4 years, but 1 year we were the 256th fastest growing private company in the United States of America. And we were the fastest growing pest control company and the second fastest growing environmental service company in the nation. And, after I sold the business, which I didn't necessarily want to sell it at the time, it's just the new, we needed the cash to continue growing. And then the new private equity players who acquired us, we kind of didn't align very well. So I ended up resigning about 6 months in there. But I was looking for something different, and I had already started the mining company, 8 months prior to selling the pest control company. And they're extremely similar. It's like, I had all these employees who would go out and get pest control customers, which had a certain lifetime value of net profits. And with mining, you have all your employees, but
the miners,
they don't talk back to you. They don't talk back to you. They don't go to HR. They just work. and they're getting your business. They're hashing blocks, and it's recurring revenue. So it's kind of the same thing. And I can use all the same KPIs like, CAC to LTV and bust out a P&L and see how the business is doing. There's definitely more strategy and less hard work involved. But it's challenging just the same.
I see. I like it. I like the analogy. We actually come from a traditional business as well, and similar sort of background. So it's great to see. And we exited our business as well. Actually, it was 2023, but beautiful. So just coming back to this chapter of mining. So there were a few different coins, right? At that time, obviously Ethereum was going to transition to proof of stake. There were a few other coins like Ravecoin was there, Monero, all the proof of work, right?
Reptonium.
Reptonium, like there were a few actually, and they were profitable at, I think Ravecoin was profitable in 2022, 2020, even 2023 till. Were you doing research on everything, or is just happened to be that you learned it on Kaspa?
Yeah, out of necessity, because Ethereum was going away. I think if Ethereum wasn't transitioning, just from pure laziness, we'd continue to mine it because it was so much more profitable than everything else.
Yeah, I see. And then obviously, I'm sure at that time, Kaspa was quite profitable.
Kaspa was very profitable, yes. And it's almost, this is a good opportunity to talk about Kaspa mining profitability. I think because Ethereum switched to proof of stake, it was a huge net positive for Kaspa.
Yeah.
But the issue is institutions, because Kaspa was so good, and because it was an accumulation of 10 plus years research on scaling Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That launched 1 year prior to the Ethereum switch to proof of stake. Institutions like piled into investing into Kaspa mining. And luckily I was there before like all of that came to fruition. We were able to mine on GPUs and accumulate a good bag. We were able to mine on FPGAs for like 3 weeks before.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
ASICs came out, and even right when the ASICs came out, we bought the first Bitmains.
Yep.
And we were able to mine extremely profitably for a little while. But because Kaspa was so good, you had Bitmain, you had companies starting out of nowhere like Ice River, who everyone, including myself, thought was a scam. We thought it was a scam because they're like, no way an ASIC manufacturer, a brand new ASIC manufacturer, invested millions of dollars into a new algorithm to come up with an ASIC, and they're willing to take all these risks. It's like, no, it's a scam, but it's not. Like, it was legitimate and there was money behind it. And then you have Marathon and you have all these Bitcoin miners who invested in Kaspa mining, and it was very profitable for a long time. I remember in 2023, even with the ASICs, we had a 90% net profit margin on the year.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. It's unheard of.
This is September 2023, right? It would have been around that when ASICs started to come out, right?
Yes. Yep.
Because I think there were 2 years
for that year.
Yeah, there was 2 years. There was GPUs only, right? And then ASICs came out around August, September 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was wildly profitable. It's just so many people invested into mining. And even myself, I'm guilty. I sold, a portion of my portfolio in Kaspa at like 0.15 to buy, like, I sold like $8 to $10 million worth to buy miners. And in retrospect, that was a terrible mistake. Because I didn't realize just how many other people were doing that. And then all of a sudden the hash rate soars to 1.5 petahash. And then, Trump with the tariffs and the Fed not cutting rates, and then just a bad macroeconomic situation. The FOMO into Kaspa mining from everyone and their mother, and then the poor macroeconomic situation, it just led to this past year being not great for mining. And it's not even that bad. It's not as bad as people make it seem. It's bad for the home miners just because they don't have cheap electricity. But even right now, if you have sub 7 cent electricity, if you have KS5, you're profitable.
Yeah.
So we get some FUD for a rapid emission schedule, and hash rate's going down, or mining's not profitable right now. I'm like, well, we're just getting out of like the worst altcoin bear market. Like, these past 6 months is like the worst quick altcoin bear market ever. And market makers are going to let Kaspa go during that amount of time, during that period of time. And our hash rate was astronomical for this coin being released just 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is what I tell people, is like homeostasis needs to happen, and everything needs to kind of balance itself out. And that's perfectly normal for mining. And we saw that with Bitcoin when it went down 80% in 2014, I think it was. And
18 again, it went to 18. I think it touched 3,000, right? All the way from 1920.
Yeah. It just seems like, a lot of these Bitcoin maxis who are trying to dunk on us, since they don't have any tangible arguments, they just post a screenshot of the last 6 months hash rate and price. Like, that's a valid argument.
I mean, I've got so much to say, but why don't we get into quickly? I want to come back to mining. I want to focus a little bit more on mining. But what's your take on all these debates that are happening with the Bitcoin maxis? Because you've been part of one that happened last week, I believe.
Yeah, I was kind of in a group chat with Kaspa Silver, hyping him up for his big debate. But I was in one with Kaspa Silver. That was kind of a spontaneous podcast a few weekends ago. And it wasn't really much of a debate because we were all making excellent factual points. And then the Bitcoiners' points were more like theological versus factual, which is that can be a reason to hold a coin and not to hold another one, is simply for theological reasons, which is fine. But I really think the debate is healthy, because these are the issues that I saw in Bitcoin as soon as I used it. Back in 2017, when I got involved in crypto and I found out what a hardware wallet was, I bought my first one and I sent my Bitcoin off of Coinbase, and it took 20 minutes and I was literally freaking out, like texting my buddies who are more mature in crypto, like, what's going on? Is it lost? like, where is it? And then just sitting in front of the screen, refreshing. And I was born in 1994. So I'm like right on the borderline of Gen Z and being a millennial. I'm technically a millennial, but maybe some of these boomers who hold Bitcoin, it's acceptable for them to receive it in 10 to 20 minutes, right? Cause they came up with slow latency for everything. But our generation, it's just simply not acceptable. It doesn't compute in our heads that that's okay. So immediately I realized, I looked it up and I realized that there was a big scalability debate going on in Bitcoin, specifically at that time in 2017, the block size debate. You had Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, Litecoin. And in retrospect now in 2025, that we're seeing the Bitcoin Kaspa debate as the new block size debate. It's fascinating to me that even before 2017, Jonathan Sampolinski, Aviv Zohar, Aspect, these guys were putting on scaling Bitcoin conferences, trying to persuade Bitcoin Core to scale Bitcoin in a manner that doesn't make any trade-offs, that doesn't just revert to like a simple change like bigger blocks like Bitcoin Cash. But it was a true solution and it was ignored. And now we understand some of the reasons why it was. In a healthy sense, Core wanted Bitcoin to be immutable and the code to change as little as possible, which is a valid argument and it's respectable. But the trade-off of that is you're not going to update your technology to where the tech stack has more end use cases. So I think it's very, after 3 years in Kaspa, it's refreshing for me to see Kaspa be on the same stage as what I consider the block size debate.
Bitcoin has gone in a very different direction from my point of view. It's really just become a collateral. It's become the safe asset. It's really trying to replicate gold in this era, right? And it, as you say, it's safe, it's slow, I can trust it. I think that's all really it's all about, right? It's never going to become P2P cash, which Kaspa is aiming to be, right? And I think this is why I personally took a step back and we don't get involved in the debates because, I find also from a different point of view of content that a lot of people are there just to really poke the Kaspa community. They don't have the right intent. That's what I think.
Yeah. And I think the leading Bitcoin voices, including Michael Saylor, they're not delusional to the fact that Bitcoin is a medium of exchange on the layer one. Like Saylor repeatedly, and all these guys, they're smart and they refer to it as digital gold. They refer to it as store of value. Even Michael Saylor's leaning more into that. Bitcoin specifically is competing against real estate, gold, etc., as a store of value. And then without conviction, they kind of say, and then, on layer twos, it can scale as a medium of exchange.
Without conviction,
but
right?
Yeah, they say completely without conviction because a little bit of research into it, you quickly understand that Lightning Network was talked about since I joined crypto in 2017.
Yeah.
And now it's a real thing. And it's been 8 years since it was like first kind of introduced. And that's plenty of time for adoption. I even have an article from CNBC about Jack Dorsey saying the Lightning Network is going to be able to effectively scale and will be used by millions of people within the next 5 years. And that was an article in 2017. And the fact of the matter is there's a few problems that people run into with Lightning. First and foremost, it is essentially banking. It's an IOU because what happens is the Bitcoin's locked in a smart contract function, or maybe not a smart contract function, but it's locked in like a multi-sig function on the base layer.
Yeah.
And then there's an IOU copy that's produced on the L2 layer. So it's essentially banking is what it is.
Yeah.
That's the first issue. So you're not bringing your sovereignty, and you're not bringing your sovereignty to the L2, and you're not bringing Bitcoin's massive scale of security and decentralization. And those are the stripes that Bitcoin deserves. And it's why I still hold some, because it's the best store of value. Kaspa is as good of a store of value pound for pound, but does Kaspa have as many nodes as Bitcoin? No. Does it have the level of hash rate Bitcoin has? No.
Yeah.
But it's delusional to think that Lightning Bitcoin is Bitcoin, L1 Bitcoin, because it's literally not. And it doesn't inherit the security and the decentralization of the L1. That's the first problem.
Yeah.
The second problem is you still have to do a transaction to lock your Bitcoin and have it be, even though it's not really bridging, be bridged over to the L2. And that requires one transaction on the L1. And one transaction on the L1 can cost $10 and it can take 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is acceptable for people who have thousands of dollars, or anyone in, like, upper middle class and above, right? But what about the people in El Salvador who maybe their net worth is like $1,000 and they have maybe $30 of spending money every single week after expenses, and they can't afford to spend $10 each week to put $20 on the Lightning Network and spend that $20. So by default, you're pricing out, half of the world's socioeconomic status, and it's not acceptable, and it's not fair.
No. Yeah. No. I don't even think
there's a host of other issues, like the watchtowers, the centralization aspect of it. There's a lot more technical things we can dive into, but just at the surface, it's an IOU, and it prices out half the world's socioeconomic status. Just those two things alone are not acceptable to be the best money in the world.
The peer-to-peer.
It's the best gold in the world. It's the best gold in the world.
Exactly.
And I think it may always will be.
Yeah.
But it's not. Kaspa is the best money in the world.
100%. 100%.
It's just extremely early in its adoption. And you can't believe in Kaspa based off adoption. You have to believe in it based off of tech and where it's going to go with its adoption.
Yeah. Well, you have to spend some time, and you have to learn Kaspa. You can't just come and say Kaspa. A lot of people do that. But if you really understand Kaspa, you'll really understand what it's aiming to be, right? What Kaspa is building and what builders are building on Kaspa, right? So, but yeah, going back to, I think, Bitcoin, I do agree. And one of the things that triggered me the most was the watchtowers.
No, it's literally to ensure that someone doesn't close your channel down and steal your Bitcoin. And then you have to have
crazy.
And then you have to, there's just so many check marks that have to happen. Like both people have to be online at the same time. Both have to have Bitcoin in their wallet to it's not feasible. And anyone looking at it and saying it's a solution for Bitcoin MOE is delusional. I'm sorry. This is what I'm seeing from the leading Bitcoin influencers is they're just doubling down on store of value. And they're not like Jack. Jack is not going around saying Bitcoin is money. He's doubling down saying if all it is this thing where the rich get richer and people are buying on top of each other, then he thinks it's failed.
It's failed.
And he's building the Lightning Network and he's pushing that forward with Square and everything like that. And that's very commendable. And I think Lightning will have some use, but it's just simply not good enough. It's not cheap enough. It's not fast enough onboarding onto. It has way too many holes, and the user experience of it is not easy. If you're going to have something be adopted globally as money, the user experience needs to be as simple as the L1.
Yeah.
Period.
I mean,
it's got to be like, I'm going to send from my wallet and I'm going to receive back And it has to be that simple if non-crypto native people are going to adopt this type of money.
Well said, Christian. Well said. And we haven't touched upon Ethereum. For $100 NFT, you were paying $100 for fee. I don't know if you've got any experience dealing with Ethereum.
Oh yes,
Spend time.
Yeah,
there.
I've been in crypto, like I said, since 2017, and
Right.
there were Ethereum tokens back then, but there wasn't DeFi. Uniswap hadn't come out until I think 2020, 2021.
21,
So
yeah.
we would trade our ERC20s on this exchange called Ether Delta.
Okay.
I think I have that right. And it was basically just this order book.
Yeah.
And you would put your order in. If someone accepted the trade, then it would just send the ETH to one side and it would send the ERC20 to the other side. So not only was I there for the DeFi in 2020 and 2021, but I was there way before when there were ERC20s that were being traded on chain basically. And yeah, I got into DeFi in 2021.
Yeah.
I got to experience Polygon. I got to experience BNB, Ethereum, you name it, right? And it's seeing the shortcomings of those chains that get you ready to understand the solution that Kaspa offers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's so important for people to understand the history behind how these chains have evolved.
And it's not just seeing the issues in scalability. It's being around long enough to know that Solana's gone down 5 different times. That Hyperliquid just went down. That BitTensor, the chain was turned off by the founder because of an exploit. You have to be in the industry long enough and you have to play on all these different playgrounds for you to make your own assumptions of what type of trade-off every single chain is making.
Yeah.
And then you discover something like Kaspa. And I know there's no such thing as no trade-offs. There's no such thing as a perfect trilemma, but Kaspa is as close as it comes to having little to no trade-offs and to being the best form of L1 money there is. Now with smart contracts, it's a little bit different because Kaspa technically could have smart contracts on the L1, but it would require our little nodes that cost $30 in hardware to be like supercomputers, just like Solana does or Hyperliquid does. And I think it was important to the project that the nodes don't change. So for that reason, there's going to be base ZK, atomically composable rollups. Which is awesome. It's almost like a layer 1.5.
Yeah.
In a sense. So, which is just as good or better than any other type of smart contract platform out there. And in fact, for the largest use case of smart contracts, which is DeFi for stablecoins, Kaspa proposes the absolute best solution. And what I'm saying in this is currently most stablecoins are on Ethereum, but Ethereum is proof of stake. And in order for these large institutions to feel comfortable using these stable rails, because Ethereum's proof of stake, they're having to buy Ethereum to be large delegators so they feel comfortable enough to have a large, strong say in the network. But also if anyone else does anything funny, they can kind of control a majority of the network to ensure it doesn't go down. And that's a major liability, but it's also a major risk they have to take, that they have to invest in the network in order to feel good about running stables for their customers. Whereas when Ethereum was proof of work, or in a proof of work network like Ethereum or like Kaspa that will have stables, you don't run into that issue because you have tens of thousands of different miners throughout the world who are the delegators. It's not a rich get richer game where I can take $1 billion and become a large delegator or staker of ETH and have that net percentage sum of my money be my net percentage sum of the ownership of the network. Try doing that with Kaspa right now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you just can't simply buy that amount of miners. You can't simply own a property with that amount of power ready to go.
Yeah.
And on a proof of work network, the security of your stable transactions doesn't depend on you having stake in the network to feel good enough about any shiestiness going on.
Yeah. That's great. Let's come back to your mining operations. Because one of the tweets I read a while back, I think, where you said you doubled your hash rate overnight and you bought 500 A6 miner, or you were running 500 A6 miner.
Yeah.
So what is your hash rate now?
So we currently have about 4 petahash. And that tweet was right when I made the mistake of selling a lot of Kaspa for a lot of miners.
Right.
Because it was a little too far deep into the game to do that, especially not realizing that there would be a macroeconomic dip on risk assets, that Marathon was secretly had 20%, like accumulating 20% of the hash rate, other large Bitcoin miners accumulating hash rate. But anyways, I digress. To answer your question, 4 petahash, and about 1 petahash is in-house in our own mining facility in Dallas, Texas. And the rest are hosted in other people's mining facilities throughout the United States.
So that's around what? Is that around 1% Kaspa hash rate?
At one point, we had about 1.5% of the net hash rate, but now it's something like 0.01%.
I see. Yeah.
And that gives you an idea. That gives you an idea of what happened, right?
No, it's exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Of how there was overinvestment into mining.
Yeah.
That caught everyone off guard alongside the macroeconomic risk asset depression.
Yeah. And now miners had to turn off all the mining rigs or, equipments they bought.
Yeah. It wasn't a depression. It was a brief recession for risk assets.
No, I wouldn't call it a depression. I think that's longer, but yeah, sort of a brief recession.
Maybe you were depressed while it happened, but it's definitely
That's true. That is true. I guess, did you have to turn off some of the miners to retain profitability, or like how are you feeling now, given it's obviously the price is suppressed from where it was?
Yeah, even us having good power and a little bit of economy of scale, we had to turn off our KS3s 2 months ago, just waiting to turn them back on. Because no matter which way you spin it, it's never a good idea to operate miners at a net loss, because you can take the money you would be losing to spot purchase the asset.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. And I mean, we've seen that through the hash rate, right? It was 1.4, I think, exahash. Now it's sitting around 700.
Yeah. People don't understand how dramatic that is, because at one point for a while, it was more hash rate than Litecoin or Doge. It was the second highest hash rate behind Bitcoin. And to go from a $0 market cap brand new coin, and it was 2 years before that happened, in a 2-year period be the second highest hash rate coin in the world. Like, of course that's over dramatic. And kudos to Jonathan for actually making the emission schedule rapid, because if he had not, then these large miners, such as myself, like, I would be in a better spot if the emissions schedule wasn't rapid, or Marathon or Bitmain with their massive self-mining and Ice River with their massive self-mining. We would just be making bank and dumping on people. But that's not the case. All of us are in pain right now. We're not. The rapid emission schedule is not a good thing, not a great thing for us. It's a really good thing for the health of the project, a really good thing for holders of the asset. And ultimately, it is a good thing for the miners in the long run, because it creates scarce supply, meaning whenever there is price discovery, there's not a lot of supply for new buyers to buy. So the price goes much higher versus if the emission schedule were earlier or had a longer emission schedule. And, so it was brilliant that he made the emission schedule as it was. And it's why overall Kaspa as an asset has performed so well. While this dip wasn't anything too crazy, it could have gone much lower. It's just there's not much supply left, and the miners are in a position to where they just basically have to hodl, and they can't just dump all their bags because their future mining is just not going to be as many coins. So all the miners are like barely trying to sell what they need for electricity because they know they're not going to have the same gold rush that they had initially. And Kaspa is the only coin positioned due to its fast block rate and due to its ability to have smart contracts that people will value due to its security and decentralization and speed, to where the fees on the network can at one necessary point in time supersede the block rewards, and the security budget can maintain.
Christian, why don't we move to a different chapter altogether? So now we talked about your mining journey so far. Why don't we move into more of a builder phase? So from mining, you got into investing, right? So now you've invested in kaspa.com. You've invested in KNS, I believe, and perhaps more, investments that are coming. So what made you go from being a miner to, getting into the building side?
The real short answer is my ADHD.
Okay.
I don't just like to hold. That's why Bitcoin is boring to me. Like, I don't just like to hold stuff. I like to play. Yeah. I like to use the asset. And that's what's so special about Kaspa. And, it's funny because I did a tweet the other day that was, stay humble, use Kaspa. And it was kind of a poking the bear, how people are like stack sats or be humble, stack sats.
Be
it's
humble.
Because Kaspa is meant to be used. It's lightweight. It's like digital silver. It's meant to be used because it's easy to use. It's cheap to use. And it's got the necessary components for, inscription based DeFi like Kaspa.com and KNS has, and also future smart contract type of stuff, which we're currently testing at Kaspa.com on Kasplex. So that's what's special about Kaspa, is it's meant to be used, and it's a very fun playground. It's very fun to experiment with all it has to offer.
Yeah. So what's been new on the building side? Being part of Kaspa.com team, you're pretty active there with Sione.
Mm-hmm.
What do you enjoy the most? What you didn't like about mining, perhaps? How you use your time.
Well, I like being surrounded by people who are smarter than myself. I think that's kind of like the trade I have with these guys, is it's like, okay, I get to learn about software development because all I have is a minor in information systems and took a visual basic coding class and an MIS class. So it's like, I know just enough on the surface and I know the principles and definitions of everything, but I've never gotten to like see these coders live, and, I try to stay out of the way as much as possible, but work with them, learn from them, and advise them.
You're pretty active. Like, I think we've had, the spaces where you jumped in to explain some of the swap stuff that Kaspa.com is building.
Yeah. But it's so incredible to see, specifically with KNS and with Kaspa.com, the amount of users and inscriptions just continues to climb, which is an incredibly healthy signal. And we're not even into smart contracts yet. And I'm testing Kaspa.com's lending platform right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is top tier. And swapping's awesome, but I think specifically lending on Kaspa is going to bring a lot of users, specifically Bitcoin users. And I've been on certain podcasts where I've talked to, or I guess I should call it spaces, where I've talked to some Bitcoin maxis who they don't trust like the BlockFis of the world or these centralized lenders against Bitcoin, because they rehypothecate, they do fractional reserve banking, and your Bitcoin's just not secure and you don't own it, right? But there's a lot of people who are looking forward to unlocking the collateral of their Bitcoin on Kaspa because they trust Kaspa enough, because it's a decentralized proof of work Satoshi system. Yep. It's just going to have smart contracts, and all they need to do is wrap their Bitcoin, put it as collateral on a lending protocol like Kaspa.com, and then they can take USDC and go to Coinbase and take out money to live with. And it's all truly decentralized on a Satoshi system. So that's what's so special. Personally, that's what I'm most looking forward to, is unlocking use cases like that can, kind of change the game in a way that no other chain is able to do.
100%. And I've got a session actually coming up with Sione. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the guys have built, and specifically on the borrowing and lending.
He's an incredible entrepreneur, man. He never rests on his laurels. He's extremely emotionally intelligent. He's good with all of his people, and he's always, I'm a visionary. Like, right. I like to look forward at the things that are next, but I'm the one who has to like pump the brakes on his thinking a little bit, because he's an incredible visionary. And I was never the one in any partnership who had to like slow down people's dreaming a little bit. But sometimes I find myself like trying to steel man or play devil's advocate with some of the crazy visions he has. But
right.
That's what you need out of a founder CEO.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you need from the entrepreneur to really push
and then
hard.
The KNS guys. I won't dox their founder, but his Twitter name is Shy. It's not his real name, but his Twitter name is Shy. And these guys, like, they're no fluff, all business. They just execute. Right. And when I invested in KNS, I was like, okay, if we can get 10,000 inscriptions, that's awesome. You know, and we're at 30,000 inscriptions like 6 months into it. And that's like on par with like how Solana did initially, how Ethereum did initially. And that's just, people don't realize that's such a good sign for Kaspa as a whole.
Yeah, 100%.
It's an interesting metric, like how many people want to own their own domain on the network, because it's an investment above and beyond what asset you're holding, and you might be buying that domain and never sell it to get more Kaspa back than you initially invested. So it's a good metric of like how bought in are people to the network, and to see the number of inscriptions rival that as early Ethereum, early Solana. And better than any other chain outside of that is an extremely, extremely like promising metric, a promising KPI, a social consensus, right? A metric to measure social buy-in
from the community. Exactly. I wouldn't compare against Ethereum. I think ENS, because they did much better. Yeah. But they also had like smart contracts from the beginning of ENS versus inscriptions. Yeah, I think it was just very hyped at that time. It was the peak of Ethereum also, and people were happy to pay.
It was also a peak bull market.
Exactly.
Yeah, KNS came out in altcoin bear market.
Yeah, and it was everyone knew about ENS back then. Even at one stage I had on my Twitter .eth. So I think, it just shows how we all get swayed when the hype is there. So outside of those two investments, are you looking at anything else that's on the pipeline?
Yeah, definitely looking at some things that I'm keeping under wraps right now.
Right. Okay. You're not ready to disclose those things?
No, not at this moment.
Not at this stage. Cool. So let's quickly move on to two more things, right? So I wanted to ask you about the Kaspa Twitter handle, the kaspaCurrency, because I'm not across the whole saga, right? I think people perhaps have been following it up close. I haven't. So as far as I know, there was a stage that you were running the Kaspa Unchained, which is the new Twitter handle of Kaspa. Are you still managing it? What's the backstory there?
it's so funny. And I found a tweet from AIXBT. It's like the AI agent,
XBT.
the main one.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like the main AI agent for crypto.
Right.
And, I was going through all of his replies surrounding Kaspa, his, her, whatever. I guess it doesn't have a sexuality, but, it's, even at one point, it said, tired of watching the Kaspa drama. And I thought that was hilarious. And I made a remark to some people within the Kaspa community. I'm like, look, even AI is tired of this drama. Like, that's saying something, right? And they're able to process information much better than humans are. But this whole Twitter handle scenario, it created a lot of drama throughout the community. So luckily, I think it's mostly completely gone. But at one point, I just wanted to offer the community my help to come in and try to help the situation. And the whole situation is a catch-22, meaning there's no way that I can win moderating and running this account, because one group wants it to be completely voiceless, little to few words, needs to be some meme content so people know that it's not official. Don't talk about like layer twos, don't talk about projects. And then the other side is like, we want like a central account. We want it to tell us why Kaspa is so amazing. We want long form posts.
I see.
So I can't win, but I wanted to offer help to try to meet in the middle to please as many people as I possibly can on both sides. And I think I've done a fairly effective job at that. There's still people on both sides who are a little confused, or they'll jump in and complain that it's one way or the other.
Who are these sides? Like, these are not, I don't believe these are developers.
So there's more of the, and it's funny because I was originally on one side, and now I understand the other side and like the other side, but I'm trying to post in the middle and be neutral. But originally there were the, degenerates like myself who liked the original Kaspa account, and they didn't mind the fancy graphics and the long form posts and the officialness of it, right? Because that's what you're used to in cryptos. There's a main account for every crypto
foundation,
and then some of the cypherpunk style of Kaspa people started pointing out like, hey, there's this main account that's so much larger than any other account, and it kind of has an official voice, and Kaspa's not a centralized project. It's like Bitcoin. So, there were some large pendulum swings from one direction to the other.
Right.
And a lot of emotion and complaining and crying and positive, healthy discussions that came out of that. And, now I think we have a Twitter handle that doesn't look official, that doesn't represent the project, that doesn't speak for the project, that hopefully has a good balance of making people think and being thought provoking while limiting the voice, while, being serious at times and educating at times, and while also being light enough at times to show that it's not an official voice.
So that's not managed by you.
It is currently. It's currently managed by me. Yeah.
Just by yourself.
So I put out a proposal. And people voted yes on the proposal. And my job now is to best navigate the catch-22 that is the Twitter account. As long as it exists, it's a catch-22. Like, it can't win, it can't lose.
Yeah.
Cause there's two different sides. So I'm trying to appease everybody. And I think for the most part, I've done a fair job at appeasing everyone while ensuring the account remains faceless and non-representative.
That's amazing. Well done to you. It's going to be understatement if I say that it's easier to manage these things, these conflicts. I think it gets pretty hard and pretty tiresome sometimes to manage these conflicts. So I'm quite happy that you're actually dealing with it and handling it.
Some people are like, they're like tracking the followers now and they're tracking the likes. And in my mind, and what I've told some people is the less of a success I am in running the account, the better of a job I'm doing, because I just want good, thought-provoking posts that are up to date with the daily narrative. I need some humor in there. I want some education in there, but nothing more, because if it's too good, then it starts to steal the limelight around all these other community accounts that have formed that are doing just as well or half as well as this account is doing from an engagement perspective. So I want this account to be a community account, because it is a community account that runs in conjunction with all these other community accounts and does just as good as them and not better. Anyone else looking for anything more is looking for a centralized account that has a voice.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think people that are tracking these likes and shares, right, they would be asking for metrics you're looking to track to show, is it working or is it not working, right? That's, I think, what it all
But the goal is for it to not work too well.
Right. I think, but there will be some people that would want it to work. And I can see the reasons why they would want it to work, but I see your point too. but for you,
what works the best are those people picking up their fingers and instead of complaining on the keyboard, writing a post about Kaspa.
100%. And that's exactly what I was going to say. If you are angry, go out, use your handle to broadcast Kaspa to other people. You don't need an official account. You don't need Christian to do the job for you. You can do it yourself.
Well, that's what was brilliant about this initial push away from the main official account with the voice, is that it enabled the community to take ownership for Kaspa's voice. And it even took me a little while to realize that that was the ultimate move that was being made.
Okay.
But once it started to happen, I think the whole community's taken a much larger sense of ownership. And I actually think that move and the current sense of ownership that each community member has taken the Kaspa debate with Bitcoin to the level that the block size debate was at, or it's getting to that level. Because people now feel the initiative to self-start and be the voice of Kaspa.
Yeah, which is the right thing, right? This is what Bitcoiners did early on. I think they were out and about shouting from the rooftop almost that Bitcoin is the best thing in 2014, 2015. But amazing, Christian. I do want to wrap this up. I've already taken an hour of your time. So I have a very exciting question that I wanted to ask. By 2030, where do you see Kaspa and the price prediction of Kaspa?
So I do see Kaspa assuming a large portion of stablecoin usage on the network. And there's no way by 2030 it's not a top 5 crypto asset. But my vision goes towards how can Kaspa make the world a better place.
Yep.
And what I truly see happening is Kaspa breaching outside of the crypto bubble and actually affecting the world in a positive manner, through the use case of peer-to-peer electronic cash, like the original vision of crypto, like Satoshi's original title of the white paper. This is the first technology that can actually beat Bitcoin to the implementation of that vision. And we're slowly seeing that play out. We're seeing a lot of merchants accepting Kaspa. We're seeing, like a lot more, increasingly every single month, a lot more merchants accepting Kaspa in the real world. And that's because it works instantly. The user experience is as simple as the layer is, like we talked about. And, Main Street, which is, mom and pop businesses, they can skip, as long as someone has Kaspa and is willing to use it, which that number will increase dramatically over time. That's the part that takes time. The the incentive for businesses to accept it's already there because they skip out on a 2 to 4% credit card fee when their bottom line is on average 5 or 6%. So if all their customers use Kaspa, they would double their take home, their net profit. So the incentive is already there. The technology is already there. It's just getting Kaspa in the hands of people to use as money is the only remaining part that just takes time due to network effects. But by 2030, I think we're going to see a heavy amount of Kaspa adoption, lifting small businesses and empowering people in underdeveloped countries to have their own economies using a hard money that doesn't price them out from their socioeconomic status. This is going to be the first implementation and the first rodeo where we actually get to see that happen and affect the world in a positive manner.
Awesome. And where do you expect the price to be at that time?
Well, price predictions are difficult. I do, at the peak of this bull market, I do see that $2 to $5 price I've always talked about. But I think the correct way to look at it is to look at it, where does Kaspa belong in the rankings, right?
Yeah. The market cap, right?
I mean,
overall.
if you truly understand the tech and its Lindy effects and its use case, you know that Kaspa is a top 3 asset or top 3 tech stack within crypto, or honestly, in my opinion, it's the best tech stack in crypto. But conservatively, like Kaspa belongs in the top 10 and no less.
Yeah.
So, and that's typically how these moves happen. Like, Solana last cycle, it quickly established itself to where it needed to reprice to. And Kaspa's, it's had that first leg of repricing from the fair launch. And I think in the final leg of this bull market, I think it's going to have its second repricing to where it outperforms most altcoins because it's catching up to more of the fair market value of where its tech stack and community is.